wow, wow.
Good
Oh,
morning.
good morning. How's everybody? Everybody's comfortable?
It's warm in here.
It's not warm in there, in the Board of Estimates room. It is absolutely not warm in
in
here.
this room.
Thank God. Well, let me just say welcome to City Hall Press. Welcome to
To City Hall.
City
Yes.
Hall under
That
Catherine
came
Pugh.
quickly. That was all. That's great.
Do you want to start out just with questions, or you have a statement?
I'm here for you
So
all.
let's talk about personnel.
Yes.
Have you made any personnel decisions as of this morning?
Yes, I have. Chief of Staff is Tisha Edwards. Let me see, how do you say, because we don't have any deputy mayors. So Chief of Staff is Tisha Edwards. Chief of Operations is Pete Hammond. And Chief of Strategic Alliances is Jim Smith. Director of Communications is Anthony McCarthy. And Director of Legislative Services is Karen Stokes.
Did you fire Paul Graziano yet?
Well, let me just tell you, I have made it very clear that Graziano is not the housing commissioner that I want. He is hired by the Housing Authority. I appoint the Housing Authority Board. So listen very clearly to the Housing Authority Board that Graziano is not my choice to run our housing department, that I am working with my team as well as with the Bloomberg School of Government. We are putting out requests for the best and the brightest. I will separate the Housing Authority from the Housing and Community Development, because if you all were to even just do an inventory of major cities around the country, Philadelphia, Boston, New York, Seattle, most of these cities operate with separate agencies. We have missed, as you well know, many federal dollars because those agencies cross-pollinate. And in my opinion, as the mayor of Baltimore, we need two focuses. One on making sure that we deal with our Section 8 problems and the homeless problem that we have in our city. The other is on building communities and neighborhoods. And when I talk about community and neighborhoods, I mean the amenities that go along with communities and neighborhoods. And so I want them separated so that we can get a clear focus on what needs to take place in these neighborhoods.
Madam Mayor, after attending your first Board of Estimates meeting, what do you make of the process for approval of city contracts? What would you like to see, if anything, change in terms of the Board of Estimates meeting or the process for a city contract?
Well, let me not be hasty. I did attend my first review on Monday, I believe it was. There is a pre-meeting, and that's important, that I understand in fact, we have what we call a routine agenda, right?
Yes.
And I think the routine agenda, I think they were anticipating giving me a briefing for about an hour or so, an hour, maybe 30 minutes, which turned out for me to be 2 hours because nothing is routine. And so we went from page 1 to page 70, whatever that was, every single item. I am an engaged person. I will be an engaged mayor. I understand that there are some appointments that are made by which contracts are cleared. And I said, well, you know, as far as I know, the only person who gets to make appointments is the mayor. So that process will be reviewed, and we will make sure that the process is fair. And not to say that it isn't, but I need to know every process that takes place. I want to understand how we go about the business of awarding contracts and qualifying people. That's the real, quote unquote, qualified people. I want to know how we qualify contractors. That's very important to me. And I want to know about our inclusion process as it relates to African Americans, Latinos, and other minorities in the city. How are they included in the opportunities that the city provides? I tell people government does two things. It provides services and it provides opportunities, and we want to make sure that we're inclusive and diverse in the entire process. What I do know about the Board of Estimates process, this isn't part of the process, it's cold in there. And so we got to fix that. We got to fix
One thing that's
it.
been kind of a continuing issue in recent years has been the use, perhaps overuse of EWOs, extra work orders,
Yes.
contracts,
Mhm.
where with accusations often by using contractors, well, the other bid came in low, but then they get EWOs. It's often very hard to figure out how an EWO is, they come up with an EWO. There's been some added transparency in the board's records under Controller Pratt in the last year. But is that an issue that you see as something you want to look at or tackle?
Let me just say, we're going to be very transparent, and I'm reviewing all processes. Including that. I don't have the answers for everything today, but I can assure you that we will be a transparent government, and that where I think something is going wrong or somebody points out to me something is not right, believe me, we will look at it.
What about the issue of having department heads or others as city residents? I think you made some.
City residency is really important to me,
How
and
are you
most
going to
people.
enforce that, or are you?
It's not about enforcing, it's about who I appoint. You know, I have the privilege of appointing people who will serve with me. And those folks, the first thing I ask is, are you going to live in the city?
And that's as a primary resident, secondary resident for some of them, or how would that work?
I need you to live in the city. That's what I
As a
want.
primary residence.
Right.
So you,
And well, let me just say, I want you to be able to live in the city, walk to work, or come to work in the city. I want you to buy gas in the city. I want you to buy your food in the city. I want you to live in the city. I know people who have second and third residencies. I don't want folks not using the services of the city. And we are in the process of looking at all of that.
So for having primary residencies in the city, for department heads and the upper.
I would like to see, that's what I'd like to see. I mean, you can't demand it, but I can ask of it. But when I'm looking for certain experts to be a part of my body, they will have a residency in the city. If it's their primary residence, if it's their secondary residence, for the most part, especially agency heads will be required to live in the city.
And your top staff that you just announced, that would be included too?
My top staff will have residency in the city.
So when you talk about splitting up the housing agency, how rapidly can that happen? And have you done any analysis on the amount of federal money that the city's missed? Because it's my understanding it's been combined since Schaefer.
Absolutely. But what we're doing is, as I said, you know, I'm not doing this by myself. And I don't consider myself to be the expert on all things housing. What I consider myself is the mayor of the city who can reach out and utilize expertise and resources that are available. Bloomberg Philanthropies is one of the groups and organizations. Bloomberg School of Government is one of the organizations that we're working with. We're talking with the League of Cities. We're looking at all the experts who understand how to go about the business of doing this, and we will do that.
So you don't have a timeline for the separation, and do you know how much federal money we lost?
Absolutely not. I just got here. What's the day? Second day? Actually, this is actually the first day.
just to be clear about that, it's on Graziano, because this is a flashpoint.
Right.
You know. So he's employed as
By the housing authority,
commissioner
right,
by a board.
right,
He's employed as head of HCD by
Right.
the mayor.
right.
Okay, so are you saying as of today that he is no longer, or at some point he's not
So
going to be
let
housing
me,
commissioner?
he will not be the housing commissioner, period.
Okay.
Jane,
of
be
today.
real clear. He will not be the housing commissioner, period. What I have to do is make sure that we're following the legality of his position. He is employed by the Housing Authority of Baltimore City. It will take a period of time when we can separate HCD from HABC. But he will not, even when we separate HCD from HABC, I get to appoint the Housing Authority Board. Now, if they don't understand that that is not the person that I want to run my housing department, then they have a problem. I get to make those appointments as well.
Is he still commissioner of the housing department until you?
HCD.
Let me check with my chief of staff. She's sending out letters today, okay? No, I'm only joking. I'm only joking, y'all. Bring-
We weren't born yesterday.
I know. Look, I know y'all are real astute press. I get that.
So as of now, he's still fulfilling that role?
Yeah.
Okay.
So what other agency heads have you made determinations about keeping?
Well, we have some empty, first of all, we have some empty spots, as you well know. We have an acting Parks and Recreation person. We have an acting, I don't even, do we have anybody acting in transportation? Doesn't seem like it, but we do have an acting transportation person. We will keep the health departments, what do y'all call them? Secretaries, department heads, commissioners? Okay, commissioner. And we will keep our police commissioner at this, yes.
And fire commissioner?
And fire commissioner. Go ahead, name some more. I can let you.
BDC,
BDC.
Bill Cole, Development Corporation.
Well, we will keep Bill Cole, and we are reviewing the Baltimore Development Corporation. We're reviewing economic development. We're regrouping and looking at how we will reframe economic development for the city.
Through the BDC or through another?
We need a BDC, absolutely, and Bill Cole will be there. We are reviewing how we will operate economically in the city. Who's going to be responsible for bringing manufacturing back to the city? That's why we have Jim Smith doing strategic alliances. Who's going to be responsible for making sure that economic development goes on in every part of our city? So we're going to be looking at economic development from the top level to the bottom level. What do we need to be a force to be reckoned with as a city, so that when they start writing about great cities economically, that we're that city? And so, again, we just got here, but at the same time, we realize that there's some things that need to take place and some changes that need to be made. But I understand that a Baltimore Development Corporation is significant as it relates to economic development.
Broadening its role?
Absolutely.
Uh-huh. Okay.
How will Mr. Smith, with all of his expertise, serve in restructuring economic development in the city?
He'll be a part of it.
Is your transition team,
Smile.
or will they be giving reports to you, to the public on recommendations, or how? do you
Yes,
plan to-
as you well know, we have our transition team is in place, and I think they've started their meetings, some more robust than others, and they will give reports to us, and we will take a look at their recommendations and see how we pull those together with what we are looking at, in terms of, our own expertise, as well as the alliances that we've made and the experts that we've brought to the table. There are a lot of things that are going to take place here as it relates to creating a more efficient and transparent government.
Are you thinking, or is there any plans to have public input in the transition team? Will they, for example, hold public hearings, either to get input from the public, or is something for the press and others to attend as they deliberate some of their?
That is purely up to that team. They have the ability to hold, and I've said this to them, they have the ability to hold public hearings if they so desire. My goal is to stream from them, because we've put on those transition teams people with a certain level of expertise and interest, not just expertise, interest, because we've got community group members on some of those transition teams. We have advocates on some of those transition teams. We've got business people on those transition teams. We have representatives from almost every community on those transition teams. So,
Are you thinking, so what is your preference in terms of these groups holding longer, something public hearing to get input from the public?
hey,
She said that
I
she's
got
going
this. I got this. I said I got this. I'm.
Your preference, I was saying.
My preference is that they do their job. They do their work.
What's your understanding at this moment, as you take over, of the status of the negotiations on the DOJ consent decree?
Well, I have my head of who's dealing with the DOJ project, but let me just say this. Where I know now is that we have a negotiating team, and I will speak with the negotiating team. Again, this is my first day on the job, and I will find out exactly where we are. I am comfortable that we're in a position to continue to negotiate, and I also, Jane, I have to say this to you, because having served as the co-chair of the Criminal Justice Reform Commission for the state of Maryland, I read the 165-page report that the DOJ provided for Baltimore, which goes back to 10 years of problems that the city has faced. And part of what I did not see in that report was the things that we had implemented last session. In terms of putting body cameras on police officers, which we now have on police officers, and you've seen some of those footages already in place. So we're doing some things. changing the cultural behavior of police officers is important to me, and also getting them to understand how important it is for them to understand the community, to be able to walk the streets, know their communities. I've seen some of that transformation taking place already. Do we need to do more? Absolutely. Do we need more police officers living in our city? Absolutely. And we have put some things structurally in place to help make that happen. I've begun conversations with real estate folks, and because people said we want people to live in the city. Buying a house is not the first priority of somebody coming out of the police academy at the age of 23 or 24. But can we provide reduced rents in some of our housing facilities, apartments and so forth, so that they can live in the city? I think that we can. I'm starting to have those discussions. 75% of our police force not living in our city, I think, is a problem. And so I am focused, and I've said this to the commissioner, on getting our police officers to live in the city. Educational programs for me are important across the board for our police officers. I think they need to be educated. And so while the DOJ report is significant and important, and much of what is in there needs to take place, I want to make sure that we understand that we can move the ball forward as it relates to the DOJ report, and that we have done some things, and I want to make sure that the things that we've done are included, that we don't get a bill for putting body cameras on police officers when we're already doing it. So those kind of things, that's why that negotiation, I believe, is really important. And I am really confident that our city solicitor, David Ralph, has been involved in that process and will continue to be involved in that process.
Do you think the consent decree may not be needed?
Oh, I wouldn't say that the consent decree is not needed, because there are some things in there that I think is no more than a wake-up call for police officers in terms of their behavior. But also, I want folks to understand that we want a safe city. People tell you that folks move to the city for two reasons. They stay here for two reasons: great schools, low crime. And so we've got to get crime down in our city. But we don't want people overly arrested. We don't want folks to end up with records that they don't need to have. This nation incarcerates more individuals than any other nation in the world. We have, in Baltimore, we have 10,000 returning citizens coming back to our city every year. And we can't put the training programs in place fast enough, because they don't even do their job on that end. So we've got a lot of work to do, and I'm looking forward to us doing the work.
Madam Mayor, what do you feel about an emergency approach to our homeless individuals in encampments and on the streets?
Well, I think anybody who's followed me over this last few wouldn't even ask that question, because you know that I have a great focus on reducing homelessness in this city. I've said that, and what I've said, though, to those who are in the nonprofit business and call themselves helping the homeless, I'm looking to put you out of business, because this is not about you all feeding people on the street. This is about us providing homes for the homeless. The federal government has told us very clearly that we must create housing for the homeless. And so the question becomes, when are we going to do it? Over what period of time are we going to be able to do it? And so that's a conversation for the business community. That's a conversation for the philanthropic community. That's a conversation for us in city government, state government, and the federal government. When are we going to put the money on the table to get it done? If you tell me we got 3,000 people sleeping on the streets of our city, then tell me how much does it cost, and tell me over what period of time and where the money is going to come from. And I can tell you that the data today says 3,000 people sleeping on the streets of your city at $125 a square foot for a 300 square foot unit is $37,500 per unit, which could be in today's market $50,000 per individual. That's $150 million. Are we going to do it over a 10-year period? Are we going to do it over a 5-year period? Are we going to do it over a 3-year period? And that's the question that I will bring to the philanthropic community and the business community. I'm not interested in people just running around feeding people. I think it's a good thing to feed people, to make sure people aren't starving on our streets. But what I am concerned about is, when are we going to get them up and off of our streets, and understand too that these are not just people from Baltimore. And I stop when I'm riding down the street, and I'll ask somebody, as I hand them a bottle of water, where are you from? As far as Virginia, Harford County, Baltimore County, Anne Arundel County, we can't be the homeless capital of Maryland. Everybody's got to do their part. And so that becomes a conversation that all of us have. as jurisdictional leaders, and I look forward to having that conversation.
There was
Talk
a,
about, sorry.
during your inaugural speech, you talked about 1567 North Fulton Avenue, and it struck a bell with me because that's the church that I used to commute to come here actually, the burnt out church, and you said it's an insult to that neighborhood. I'm wondering if you, in the bigger picture of the city, what does that mean for residents? Because there are a number of 1567.
That was my point. It's not about 1563 Fulton Avenue, North Fulton Avenue. It's about many of the corners, many of the neighborhoods that have been neglected for decades. And not because we haven't done other things, because you can ride through some neighborhoods and you don't see that at all. I was riding through East Baltimore, I was thinking how beautiful some of those neighborhoods are, and there are row houses too. So for some reason, this part of town got neglected, and we need to understand why. But more importantly, we need to just fix it. And so that's, we're going to be taking a tour of the city, I think it is, because I got to get people out of their offices onto our streets. I don't go home by way of 83. I don't ride up highways and byways. I ride through the cities and the neighborhoods so I can see how people are living, so that I can understand the condition of the people who live in my city and understand the needs of those who are invested here, because they too don't want people sleeping on the street. They too don't want burnt out buildings. And we want companies and corporations to say Baltimore is the place that they want to be. Then we've got to make sure that we're accommodating everybody. And that's the kind of city that I want to be mayor of.
Are you
Am
moving
mayor
to
of.
Bolton Hill? Are you moving to Bolton Hill?
No, everybody wants me to move to everybody's neighborhood. Ashburton, I want the property values to go up in Ashburton, in the community where I live. Everybody keeps asking me, am I moving to Canton? Am I moving downtown? I love Ashburton, and Ashburton loves me.
Mayor, with the, you listened to 3 of the quadrennial audits during the Board of Estimates today. What value is there in them? What kind of information are these audits providing?
I tell you, one of the things that came was just loud and clear for me was the need for improved technology platform. I mean, 5G is coming. Connectivity is what it's all about. If we can't even be connected in City Hall and in our agencies, I don't know how we expect the people in our city to be able to be connected. If you have to submit everything, to have to apply for MBE, WBE today, that you got to come down to City Hall, get a phone, that's crazy. So putting stuff online, becoming more technologically savvy is important. And so I glean that more than anything from these audits. I think audits are important. I think the deliberation over them is important. And just this first meeting, I learned a great deal about some of our needs.
As just an FYI, the Board of Estimates needs to be automated. It's a lot of work by hand.
Yeah, you see all that paper? Oh my God. I was like, what page? Look, I was tearing through staplers. I was like, really? Come on, y'all, we can do better than this.
On a more substantial, could you talk a little more about how you see your role in you said yesterday you're going to go deliver a letter to the new president-elect Donald Trump. How do you see that coming into play in terms of having Baltimore, what is potentially a laboratory for some theories or rebuilding?
Well, first I think it's important for me that I would mail that letter, deliver that letter, or however that letter gets to DC. But
you're going to mail it or you're going to go down?
I'm actually going to DC. I'm supposed to go there on Saturday, but he won't be there, I don't think, on Saturday. I got to go to Trump Towers, and I'm going to New York. But he's here Saturday. He's here Saturday, so I could either slip it under the door or ask him, knock, knock, can I come in?
Give it to Ivanka.
Or give it to Ivanka. Anyway, we'll see to it.
What is the broader sort of strategy do you see?
No, what I was going to say to you is that I think the discussion first begins with our federal delegation and about what our needs are. And we've begun that discussion already. And we will prepare, we're looking at the Howard Street Tunnel, what needs to be done there. We are preparing letters and data and information for our federal delegation. They've asked to sit down with me. I've got to have all of our federal priorities put together by March 1st, and we'll have that done.
The previous mayor had pushed a plan to sell these 4 city parking garages to fund recreation centers. Where does that stand now?
Well, I'm not so sure that we understand how much money is coming into the city for recreation. Pete's not here. We just got Bernie money for libraries, community schools, and you'll see rec centers as a part of that as well. I'm going to evaluate the parking garages, because they're an asset. They give off revenue. And I just don't see where we as a city can afford to give away or sell revenue. You know, sometimes we do things for expediency, and I'm more interested in what we do for the long term.
What about selling the Hilton?
All assets of the city will be evaluated.
One more question. Madam Mayor, on your theme of housing and community development, I wanted to ask you about the closure of the Bell Foundry Art Space. Oftentimes artists are strong contributors to community development. So I wanted to ask you, what is your administration's plans to make sure that there is both affordable and safe housing?
Well, one of the things I'm going to do is we're going to be working with the arts community, because as you well know, we do have arts housing throughout the city. And so we will reach out to the arts community, because if that has not been done, it should be done. Because we value artists in this city. We have a great arts community. But what we don't want to happen is what we just saw happen in California. We don't want that same kind of condition to happen here. So we want to make sure that wherever they reside, that they're safe and they're able to continue to contribute to our arts community, to our art environment. We support the arts, we will support them, but more importantly, we want to make sure that they're safe.
And the Bell Foundry was known for being a place for artists of color and the LGBT community. So they were particularly frustrated that they were the ones that were shut down. So you talked a little bit about inclusion. Can you comment on that?
Well, as you know, I was not even aware that that took place, but I'm looking at all of what took place as it relates to that. We will do a full investigation so that I can speak to you more profoundly about the next steps as it relates to that particular incident. You know, this will be an inclusive and diverse government. This will be an inclusive and diverse city, and we will take in consideration every individual. And so we will not leave them out there hanging. I will reach out to the arts community to make sure that we find some accommodations. Thank you all. Thank you, everybody. Good first day for you all.